Long before the written word, humanity communicated through symbols. These weren't just primitive drawings, they were sophisticated expressions of our deepest connection to the cosmos. What's remarkable is that across continents and millennia, the same sacred symbols appear repeatedly. The cross, the circle, the spiral, the triangle. This universal language predates all organized religions yet forms their common foundation. The cross, found in petroglyphs dating back 10,000 years, wasn't just a geometric shape, but a profound representation of the intersection between heaven and earth, spirit and matter. Ancient cave paintings across Europe, the Americas, and Asia reveal this symbol was already imbued with spiritual significance long before Christianity adopted it. Similarly, the circle, perfect, endless, without beginning or end, appears in every culture as a representation of eternity, wholeness, and divine perfection. From stone circles like Stonehenge to the ancient sun discs of Egypt, this symbol spoke directly to the human understanding of cosmic order and cyclical time. The spiral, etched into monuments from Ireland to New Zealand, captures humanity's earliest understanding of growth, evolution, and the journey of consciousness. It speaks to a universal recognition that life moves not in straight lines, but in expanding cycles of understanding. What does this remarkable consistency tell us? These aren't merely convenient shapes. They are the original language of the soul, speaking directly to something innate within our consciousness. The renowned intuitive Edgar once suggested that these symbols represent archetypal forces that exist beyond our physical reality, but shape our understanding of it. They are, in essence, the bridges between the seen and unseen worlds that our ancestors recognized instinctively. Consider how the ancient symbol of the Tree of Life appears in Norse mythology, Kabbalistic teachings, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Mayan codices. Though separated by vast distances and with no apparent cultural exchange, these civilizations depicted remarkably similar concepts of a central axis connecting different realms of existence. This suggests something profound, that humans across all cultures can access the same spiritual truths through direct experience. The symbols aren't arbitrary. They're representations of energetic patterns that exist in the universe itself, patterns our ancestors could perceive through expanded states of consciousness. When we look at prehistoric art, the hand stencils, the geometric patterns, the animal figures, we're not seeing primitive attempts at decoration. We're witnessing humanity's first efforts to document their spiritual experiences, their encounters with the invisible forces that shape reality. The zigzag lines found in cave paintings worldwide don't merely represent water or lightning. They capture the vibrational nature of energy itself. The concentric circles aren't just aesthetic choices. They map the expanding fields of consciousness that our ancestors experienced during deep meditative states. What's particularly fascinating is that modern neurological research shows that these same geometric patterns appear during altered states of consciousness across all human subjects, regardless of their cultural background. These form constants, as scientists call them, suggest that our nervous system itself is wired to perceive certain fundamental patterns in the fabric of reality. The implications are stunning. The earliest spiritual expressions of humanity weren't built on myth or superstition, but on direct perception of energy patterns that modern science is only beginning to understand. Our ancestors weren't making up stories. They were documenting their experiences of the invisible architecture of existence. This universal language of symbols speaks to the unity of human spiritual experience across time and space. It suggests that beneath the surface, differences of religion and culture lies a common spiritual inheritance, a shared capacity to perceive and interact with the deeper dimensions of reality. As we journey through the remaining chapters, we'll explore how these primal symbols evolved into the complex symbolic languages of organized religions, and how their power continues to work upon our consciousness today, often without our conscious awareness. The mystery isn't just that these symbols exist everywhere, it's that they continue to resonate with us at the deepest levels of our being, activating something ancient and knowing within us. They are indeed, as many traditions suggest, the original language of creation itself. The remarkable consistency of sacred symbols across civilizations points to something deeper than coincidence or cultural exchange. It reveals what Carl Jung termed the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of primordial images and patterns hardwired into the human psyche. These universal archetypes transcend individual experience, connecting us to ancestral wisdom that exists beyond time and space. When we examine the world's spiritual traditions through this lens, we discover that religious symbols aren't merely cultural inventions, but expressions of innate psychological patterns that emerge spontaneously in all human consciousness. The mandala, for instance, a circular, often geometric pattern representing cosmic wholeness, appears in Tibetan Buddhism, Native American sand paintings, Gothic cathedral rose windows, and even in the spontaneous drawings of children who have never been exposed to these traditions. This universal emergence suggests that certain symbolic forms serve as natural interfaces between human consciousness and deeper metaphysical realities. They are, in essence, the native language through which our consciousness communicates with realms beyond ordinary perception. What makes these archetypal symbols so powerful is their multidimensional nature. They operate simultaneously on multiple levels of understanding: emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. The triangle, for example, speaks to the threefold nature of existence found in countless traditions: body, mind, spirit, father, mother, child, past, present, future, creation, preservation, transformation. Its simple geometric form contains within it a profound metaphysical truth about the structure of reality itself. Consider how the symbol of the serpent appears across spiritual traditions, from the Kundalini energy of yoga to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, from the Aztec feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl to the Norse world serpent Jörmungandr. Though interpreted differently, the serpent consistently represents transformation, wisdom, and life force energy. This points to a universal human recognition of certain energetic patterns in consciousness that transcend cultural conditioning. The archetypal nature of these symbols explains why they continue to affect us so profoundly. Even when we don't consciously understand their meaning, they bypass the analytical mind and speak directly to deeper layers of awareness. This is why religious ceremonies worldwide incorporate these symbols. They activate resonant fields within human consciousness that facilitate connection with transcendent dimensions of reality. As Jung discovered in his work with patients, these archetypal symbols often emerge spontaneously during dreams and deep meditative states, even among individuals with no prior exposure to spiritual traditions. This suggests that the human psyche naturally generates these symbols as bridges to healing and wholeness, regardless of cultural programming. The pentagram, for example, appears in ancient Mesopotamian writings, Greek philosophy, medieval Christian mysticism, and contemporary spiritual practices. Its 5 points have represented the 5 elements, the 5 wounds of Christ, the 5 pillars of Islam, and the human body with outstretched limbs. This consistency points to an inherent recognition of 5-fold symmetry as a fundamental pattern in consciousness and nature. What's particularly fascinating is how these archetypes appear to evolve alongside human consciousness while maintaining their essential form. The ancient Egyptian Ankh symbol, representing life and immortality, transformed over millennia into the Christian cross while preserving its fundamental meaning as an emblem of eternal life. This suggests that while our interpretations may change, the underlying archetypal energies these symbols represent remain constant. Modern research in the field of sacred geometry reveals that many of these universal symbols incorporate specific mathematical ratios, like the golden mean, 1:1:6:18, that appear throughout nature, from the spiral patterns of galaxies to the arrangement of leaves on a stem. This suggests that these symbols aren't arbitrary cultural constructions, but representations of the mathematical principles underlying creation itself. The power of these archetypal symbols lies in their ability to resonate with something fundamental in our consciousness, something that recognizes truth beyond intellectual understanding. When we contemplate the infinity symbol, for instance, something within us intuitively grasps the concept of boundlessness, even if we cannot fully articulate this understanding in words. This recognition supports what many mystical traditions have long maintained, that spiritual understanding isn't something acquired, but remembered, a recollection of wisdom already present within the soul. The symbols serve as keys that unlock doors to knowledge already present in our deeper awareness. As the visionary Edgar noted in his readings, these archetypal patterns aren't just psychological constructs, but living thought forms that exist in the subtler dimensions of reality. They serve as conduits through which higher consciousness can flow into human awareness, activating latent potentials within us. The implications are profound. Beneath the apparent diversity of religious expression lies a unified field of spiritual understanding, accessed through these universal symbolic gateways. By working with these symbols consciously, we can activate the same inner knowing that has guided spiritual seekers throughout human history. When we understand symbols as archetypes rather than mere cultural artifacts, we begin to recognize their presence in our daily lives and their continuing influence on our collective consciousness. They remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago because they speak to unchanging aspects of human experience and our relationship with the cosmos. Among the vast array of sacred symbols that span human spiritual traditions, 3 stand out as particularly universal and powerful: the cross, the circle, and the star. These geometric forms appear with remarkable consistency across time and space, suggesting they contain fundamental truths about the structure of consciousness and reality itself. Each functions as a kind of energetic signature, a cosmic code that unlocks specific dimensions of spiritual understanding. The cross represents perhaps the most primal geometric concept in spiritual symbolism, the intersection of 2 realms. Long before Christianity adopted it, the cross symbolized the meeting point between heaven and earth, spirit and matter, vertical and horizontal dimensions of existence. In its simplest form, it maps the cardinal directions, orienting consciousness within manifest reality while simultaneously pointing beyond it. In the ancient Egyptian Ankh, the cross was topped with a loop, representing the union of masculine and feminine principles and the breath of eternal life flowing through the dimensions. In Norse traditions, the hammer of Thor, a T-shaped cross, represented the power that bridges divine realms and earthly existence. The Celtic cross incorporated the circle, symbolizing the union of heaven and earth with the eternal. Even in pre-Columbian America, the cross appeared as a symbol of the world tree connecting different planes of existence. What makes the cross so universally significant is that it embodies the fundamental spiritual experience of living at the intersection of time and eternity, form and formlessness. It maps our existence at the crossroads of opposing forces, a position that creates both tension and extraordinary potential. The cross reminds us that transformation occurs precisely at this point of convergence, where seemingly contradictory realities meet. The circle, by contrast, represents wholeness, unity, and the eternal return, that which has no beginning and no end. From the stone circles of megalithic Europe to the medicine wheels of Native Americans, from the Enso of Zen Buddhism to the mandalas of Hindu and Tibetan traditions, the circle consistently appears as a symbol of completeness and divine perfection. Unlike linear structures, the circle distributes force equally from center to circumference in all directions. It thus becomes the perfect representation of divine consciousness, equal in all directions, contained yet infinite, centered yet boundless. When ancient cultures depicted their deities with halos or drew protective circles in ceremonial practices, they were acknowledging the perfect, self-contained nature of spiritual energy. The circle also represents cycles of time and the rhythmic patterns of existence, the seasons, the lunar phases, the journey from birth to death and rebirth. Its appearance in ceremonial contexts worldwide speaks to the universal recognition that spiritual life isn't a linear progression, but a cyclical return to source, ever expanding in understanding while maintaining connection to center. Perhaps most importantly, the circle symbolizes integration, the gathering of all parts into harmonious relationship with the whole. The circular council gatherings of indigenous traditions worldwide reflect this understanding that true wisdom emerges when perspectives are unified rather than fragmented. The circle has no hierarchy. Every point on its circumference is equidistant from center, symbolizing the equal value of all aspects of creation in relation to the divine. The star, our third universal symbol, represents guidance, illumination, and the bridge between cosmic and human realms. Across cultures, Stars have been seen as openings through which divine light enters our dimension, points of connection between earthly and celestial worlds. The five-pointed star, or pentagram, appears in traditions from ancient Mesopotamia to medieval European mysticism, representing the human form with outstretched limbs, as well as the five elements that compose creation. The six-pointed Star of David combines two triangles, representing the perfect balance of opposing forces, the integration of spiritual and material realms, and the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. The eight-pointed star found in Islamic geometric art symbolizes divine perfection and the angels who mediate between heaven and earth. The nine-pointed star in Baha'i tradition represents the unity of world religions. Stars in spiritual symbolism function as navigational tools for the soul, fixed points of light by which we orient ourselves in the darkness of material existence. Just as ancient sailors used stars to navigate vast oceans, the spiritual seeker uses these symbolic lights to navigate the journey of consciousness. What's particularly fascinating about these three symbols, cross, circle, and star, is how they interact and combine across traditions. The cross within the circle appears worldwide as a solar symbol representing the divine light, organizing the four directions of space. The star within the circle represents divine consciousness radiating into manifestation. These combinations aren't random, but reflect deep understanding of how spiritual forces interact and organize reality. As Edgar observed in his readings, these symbols aren't just conceptual tools, but actual energy patterns that structure consciousness itself. When we meditate upon them, draw them, or incorporate them into sacred ceremonies, we're not merely engaging with abstract concepts, but aligning our awareness with fundamental organizing principles of the cosmos. Modern physics inadvertently confirms this ancient wisdom. Quantum mechanics reveals that particles organize themselves into geometric patterns that mirror these ancient symbols. The Platonic solids, three-dimensional expressions of these two-dimensional sacred forms, appear throughout nature, from crystal structures to viral geometry, suggesting that these symbols truly do represent the building blocks of physical reality. What's particularly powerful about these universal symbols is their simplicity. Their fundamental forms can be recognized by anyone, regardless of education or background. Yet within this simplicity lies profound complexity. Each symbol contains endless layers of meaning that unfold as consciousness evolves. They are both immediately accessible and infinitely deep, speaking simultaneously to the child and the sage within us. When we recognize how these symbols appear across religious traditions, we begin to see beyond the superficial differences that separate spiritual paths. The cross, circle, and star reveal a common visual language beneath diverse theological expressions, a shared recognition of the patterns that structure consciousness and creation. They point to the unity of spiritual experience that transcends cultural and historical boundaries. Beneath the apparent differences of the world's great religions lies a remarkable commonality, a shared symbolic language that speaks to the unity of spiritual experience. From the towering cathedrals of Christianity to the intricate temples of Hinduism, from the geometric precision of Islamic mosques to the natural sanctuaries of indigenous traditions, the same fundamental symbols appear again and again, creating a silent dialogue across faith traditions that transcends doctrinal differences. This hidden symbolic continuity suggests something profound, that all authentic spiritual paths access the same fundamental truths, though they express these truths through different cultural and historical lenses. The symbols function as a universal esoteric language, revealing to the initiated what cannot be fully articulated in words or dogma. Consider how the sacred geometry of the Sri Yantra in Hinduism, with its 9 interlocking triangles creating 43 smaller triangles, mirrors the complex geometric patterns found in Gothic cathedral rose windows. Both utilize mathematical precision to create contemplative gateways that shift consciousness beyond ordinary perception. Though separated by thousands of miles and emerging from entirely different theological contexts, both traditions recognize that certain geometric patterns facilitate the expansion of awareness. Similarly, the concept of the Divine Trinity appears across seemingly unrelated traditions, as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in Christianity. as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva in Hinduism, as the triple goddess in ancient European traditions. This threefold understanding of divine expression isn't merely coincidental, but reflects a universal recognition of how consciousness manifests through triadic relationships. The symbolism of light overcoming darkness appears with remarkable consistency across traditions, from the Jewish menorah to the Hindu festival of Diwali, from the Christian Easter candle to the Buddhist butter lamps. This universal recognition of light as a metaphor for spiritual illumination speaks to a shared understanding of the spiritual journey as one from ignorance to wisdom, from separation to unity. What's particularly revealing is how initiatory traditions across religions utilize similar processes and symbols. The ceremonial death and rebirth experienced in Christian baptism mirrors the symbolic death and resurrection in Egyptian mystery traditions and shamanic initiation rites worldwide. The common thread is the recognition that spiritual transformation requires a symbolic surrender of the old self before the new can emerge. Water, as a purifying element, appears across religious boundaries. In the Islamic wudu ritual, the Hindu sacred rivers, the Christian baptismal font, and Native American sweat lodge ceremonies. Fire similarly transcends religious differences, appearing as transformative energy in everything from Zoroastrian fire temples to the Christian Pentecost, from Hindu yajna fire rituals to indigenous sacred hearths. Even theological concepts find surprising parallels across traditions. The Islamic understanding of Tawhid, divine unity, resonates deeply with the Hindu concept of Advaita, non-duality, and the Christian mystical tradition of Unio Mystica, mystical union. Though expressed through different theological languages, each points to the same experiential truth, that separation from the divine is ultimately an illusion to be overcome through spiritual practice. The symbolic importance of sacred mountains appears with remarkable consistency, from Mount Sinai in Judaism to Mount Kailash in Hinduism, from Mount Fuji in Shintoism to the Black Hills in Lakota tradition. These elevated places represent the axis mundi, the cosmic center where heaven and earth meet, where human consciousness can ascend to divine awareness. What makes these symbolic parallels so significant is that they often emerged independently, without historical contact between traditions. This suggests they aren't borrowed or imitated, but arise naturally from direct spiritual experience, from the soul's encounter with ultimate reality. As Edgar noted in his readings, these symbolic consistencies point to what he called the one law, the underlying spiritual principle that manifests through diverse religious expressions, according to the needs and understanding of different cultures and times. The symbols are different facets of the same diamond, each reflecting a particular aspect of the whole while remaining part of the unified crystal of truth. Perhaps most fascinating is how these symbols operate on multiple levels simultaneously. The labyrinth found in medieval Christian cathedrals, ancient Greek sites, and indigenous American traditions functions not just as a metaphor for the spiritual journey, but as an actual tool for altering consciousness. When walked with intention, its winding path induces a meditative state that transcends cultural context, speaking directly to the body's innate wisdom. The consistent appearance of sacred numbers across traditions reveals another layer of this universal symbolic language. The number 7 appears with remarkable frequency in the 7 chakras of Hindu tradition, the 7 heavens of Islam, the 7 days of creation in Judaism, the 7 sacraments of Catholicism. This suggests recognition of a sevenfold structure within consciousness itself that transcends cultural boundaries. What emerges from this comparative study isn't relativism, but a recognition of the remarkable unity underlying spiritual diversity. The symbols don't contradict each other, but complement and complete one another, offering different perspectives on the same ultimate truths. They form a comprehensive spiritual vocabulary that no single tradition fully encompasses alone. This understanding offers a powerful antidote to religious sectarianism and fundamentalism. When we recognize that different traditions are speaking the same symbolic language through different dialects, the basis for conflict dissolves. What remains is appreciation for the rich diversity through which the universal spiritual inheritance of humanity expresses itself. Modern depth psychology has rediscovered what the ancient traditions always knew, that symbols bypass the rational mind and speak directly to deeper layers of consciousness. They communicate not through intellectual concepts, but through resonance, awakening corresponding energies within the psyche of the contemplator. The mystery isn't just that these symbols appear across traditions, but that they continue to work upon our consciousness today, even when we don't intellectually understand their meaning. They connect us to an ancient stream of wisdom that flows beneath the surface of our modern secularized world. As we conclude this exploration, we're left with a profound question. If the same symbolic language appears across all authentic spiritual traditions, might there be a singular source from which all these traditions emerge? Not a historical source, but a metaphysical one, a unified field of consciousness from which all spiritual understanding arises. The universality of these symbols suggests that beneath the divisive theology of religions lies a unifying experience of the sacred, one that has been accessed by contemplatives, mystics, and visionaries across time and culture. They remind us that at the heart of spiritual life isn't doctrine or belief, but direct experience of the divine, an experience that transcends the boundaries we've created between traditions. In recognizing this shared symbolic heritage, we reclaim our common spiritual inheritance, a birthright of wisdom that belongs not to any single tradition, but to humanity as a whole. If these ancient symbols have awakened something within you, this is just the beginning of our journey together. Subscribe now to unlock more hidden knowledge that connects all spiritual traditions. Leave a comment sharing which symbol resonates most deeply with your soul, whether it's the cross, the circle, the star, or another sacred pattern you've encountered. Your insight might illuminate the path for fellow seekers. Remember, as we explore these universal symbols together, we're not just studying history, we're activating the timeless wisdom encoded in our very DNA. Join our spiritual community today and become part of this ancient yet ever-new conversation.